This episode is brought to you by SureTest. Transform and revolutionize your health system's application testing process with SureTest Managed Test Automation Solution, SureManage. Eliminate 80% or more of your manual testing activities, reducing errors and reclaiming thousands of hours for your staff to focus on more rewarding, strategic projects. Continuous testing is critical, and getting it right saves lives. Discover the future of healthcare IT automation with SureTest. Visit thisweekhealth.com/SureTest today and elevate your healthcare system's performance.
Today on Newsday.
I think they're very prescriptive about the types of people that they hire for what they know their clients and their company needs. And they're continually evolving and they push the envelope. That's what I think they do right.
My name is Bill Russell. I'm a former CIO for a 16-hospital system and creator of This Week Health, where we are dedicated to transforming healthcare one connection at a time. Newsday discusses the breaking news in healthcare with industry experts. Now, let's jump right in. All right, it's Newsday, and today we are joined by Laura O'Toole with SureTest. Laura, how's it going?
Going great, Bill. How are you? I'm wearing my yellow hat.
Yeah.
Part of the Yellow Hat Club. Waiting to see more pictures.
It's been an amazing year. I think $127,000 has been raised. And a lot of that was individual contributions. I think it's really been humbling to watch and exciting. And I love the fact that as we're out in the community, people will come up to me and tell me stories and we'll have discussions, and it's really good. So
Very cool.
How are things in the SureTest world? Are people finally figuring out that they can save money and automate these processes? And are we starting to see the market realize the potential of this?
Absolutely. The light bulb has gone off. It's been a fun ride. It's exciting. I think we have enough ROI studies now that, like anything, when you have proof and you're able to go back to a client and say, these are the hours that were saved and how your analysts could put them to better use. So definitely starting to get traction in the market over time as people not only have embraced the solution, but as the analysts have gotten on board. And we're finding now, talking to folks at Yale, their Stork team is like shouting from the rooftops. So now folks are like, when is it my turn? I want to be next. So we're getting that effect starting.
That is what I've heard. Is we brought it in, we weren't really sure what to expect, and then we were like, oh my gosh, we could use it here, we could use it here, we could use it here, and it explodes like that. I've not been doing Newsdays recently. I've been traveling a lot and doing 229 meetings and various things, and I'm going to be traveling most of the month of October as well. So I haven't been doing Newsday. So I'm going to go back to a story that is still top of mind for a lot of people, and that is Particle Health filed a federal antitrust lawsuit against Epic Systems, accusing the health IT giant of using its monopoly power over EHRs, which cover 94% of Americans, to stifle competition in emerging payer platform market. The lawsuit filed in New York alleges that Epic anti-competitive behavior, including cutting off access to critical patient data, is harming innovation, doctors, patients, and healthcare providers. And they cite some things. I've seen the discussion unfold on social media, and a couple things strike me.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that strikes me is people don't read anymore. They don't read the actual article. And so I see people going, oh, this and that. And I'm like, that lawsuit has nothing to do with that. First of all, it's the payer platform market, which is a new space that Epic's going into that they're looking at. The second thing that is the most common comeback is the patient owns the record. And the patient doesn't own the record. Whoever creates the record owns the record. And that's true in 49 states. That's the law in 49 states. And people are like, why is that? That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense when you step back and think about it. We don't own, like, if Amazon has records about us or a CRM, think about how many places your name appears in a CRM. You don't own that record. You don't get to see that record. In some cases, and actually that's what HIPAA does. It gives you the right to see that information. So people go, oh, I own it. No, it gives you a view into it. And I'll give you the floor in just a minute. This is me on my soapbox here. And then the last one is people are all worked up about Epic's monopolistic position in the market. And yes, they have made huge inroads. They're growing and those kinds of things. But there's a couple of things that sort of strike me. One is it's not a monopoly. By definition, it's not a monopoly. It's spread across multiple EHR vendors enough to be spread out. But the other is when you talk to their clients, typically when there's a monopoly and you talk, if there's an airline, I feel like there's close to an airline monopoly and the prices keep going up, the service keeps going down. And so clients, you feel a monopoly in a negative way. Every client I talk to of Epic's goes, we love them. And even if they have problems with them, they're like, I wish all my vendors would act like Epic. And you're like, is that normal in a monopoly that they go, yeah, I want more people to act like that? Anyway, I'm curious your thoughts on this one.
Well, you know how I feel. I think competition is good in the market. I think it's important. I think it keeps people on their toes. I think Epic keeps themselves on their toes. If you look, I think Judy just wrote one of her news notes or whatever, the latest innovation that they're coming with around Simplify and how they're going to better integrate their AI tools. When a health system, I just read, I think Northwell is going to spend 1.2 billion rolling out Epic. When you're spending that kind of money, you demand service. And I do think that you get service from Epic. It's the top-notch vendor. So it doesn't surprise me. If you look at what's going on with interoperability, it's still a hard time with Cerner and Oracle. I think you got really Athena and Epic. And Judy's out there saying, how do we solve the interoperability problem? So I believe she really cares and puts the patient at the center, and it makes a difference. So I'm not surprised here that our clients are happy.
Let me ask you this. Again, the clients are very happy with them, not focusing on the downfalls of their competitors, but focusing on what they do right. What do they do right that so many health system leaders are like, yeah, I wish most of my partners were like them?
I think they do three things. I do think they put the patient at the center. They also put their physicians and their clinicians at the center. And the other thing that they do really well is they're very careful and very prescriptive about who they hire. I was reading and I thought it was so cool that the way that the Epic has their tests, you have to come in, you have to have a test, you have to have a certain aptitude. And it's not so much a skill test as it is an analytics test to make sure that you have a certain amount of capability, certainly, but how you're going to assimilate in the culture, how you're going to program, what kind of developer you're going to be. And do you know, I had no idea of this. The way that test started was with her 15-year-old son. I read an article and I thought this was the coolest thing. She was in the basement. Her son had won all these contests for programming. And she said, listen, I'm having a tough time hiring the right talent. This kid actually came up with the characteristics and the components of what this test was going to be. And they've evolved it, but they used it for many years. I think they're very prescriptive about the types of people that they hire for what they know their clients and their company needs. And they're continually evolving and they push the envelope. That's what I think they do right.
I'm going to come back and we're going to riff on hiring for a little bit. I think there's a handful of things that are beneficial to them. One is they're not a publicly traded company, so they do not have quarterly earnings. And that is a huge advantage. And I've heard that from CEOs of their competitors. I happened to have dinner one night with two of the CEOs of their competitors. And I'm like, why does Judy keep kicking your butt? You know me, I just like to push just to see where it goes. And invariably they said, first of all, the two companies I'm talking to, they're both publicly traded. They're like, that's a different deal. You're constantly pushing for earnings and she doesn't have that. And you could see over time that really benefited Epic to not have that kind of money focus.
It's a different kind of pressure. It's a different kind of pressure when you have to hit a number every single quarter as a public company. I didn't think about that one, Bill, but I think you're absolutely right. And you and I were talking not too long ago about succession plan and what's going to happen. And I said, really interesting to see what the succession plan is. And I just read as a part of this other article, she says she has no interest in retiring and the company will not go public. It'll remain employee owned and that she has a detailed plan for that. It'll be interesting to see what specifically that is, but I do think that's a differentiator. I completely agree with you.
If you want to have some fun sometime, and I've done this with her, I'm like, what does Epic look like 100 years from now? She has an answer for that question, which in and of itself should just blow your mind. Right. So
it's amazing. And for me, the fact that she's a woman, I got to tell you, I had such a cool experience last week. It was my birthday. I went to a client meeting in New Orleans, and not only was the CIO at the helm a woman, her entire senior cabinet that was around the table, there were other people on the phone that were men, very diverse group. But to see that many senior women leaders in healthcare technology, brought me so much joy, you have no idea.
No, I know how much joy it brings you. And Sarah, who might be listening to this, and others,
Yeah.
I have people who hold me accountable to the fact that I've said in the past that I want to help to promote women within health IT. And every now and then they'll say to me, it's like, hey, the last 7 CIOs you interviewed were all men. And I'm like, look, we're not going to have parity here because we can't have parity because at this point, it's still 8 out of 10 CIOs around the country are men. If I'm always every third interview is going to be a woman, then I'm going to just keep repeating the women. And I'm like, we've got to solve the problem there before I can solve it.
Yep. You can only do so much with that one, Bill.
Join This Week Health for a deep dive into third-party risk management with Enterprise Health. Miroslav Balote, CISO at Valley Health, will share his journey to building an integrated risk management program that automates and simplifies vendor risk. Alongside experts George Pappas and Scott Matilla from Enterprise Health, this session will cover the latest challenges and practical solutions in managing cybersecurity threats. Don't miss this valuable conversation on protecting your organization and improving compliance without overburdening your team. You can register now at thisweekhealth.com/cybersecurity priorities to secure your spot.
Let's talk about hiring. So one of the things that Judy believes is in quantifying, like there's a formula for hiring, eliminating the mistakes. And I've gone through several hiring processes in my career. And one of the more interesting ones was a private equity firm. When I left St. Joe's, private equity firm brought me in to look at leading the health IT organization for this, I would say, $900 million to $1 billion organization. And it was health adjacent. Let's call it healthcare adjacent. And I'd led a $7.5 billion organization and whatnot. And I go through the interview and they're like, oh my gosh, you just crushed it. It was fantastic. All we have left is take this little test and we'll get back to you. So I take the test and the guy calls me back and says, I'm sorry, we can't hire you. I'm like, what? I don't understand what just happened. He goes, everything about this test says that you will get incredibly bored if you work here and you'll leave within 2 years and we're not willing to make that investment. I'm like, you're putting that much stock in that test? And he goes, let me ask you this question. Do you think you will get bored and leave here in 2 years? I'm like, yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I smiled and nodded. I'm like, yeah, this is a lot smaller than I would like. And it doesn't present as much challenge as the healthcare CIO role did or being an entrepreneur. It's interesting. Size, in this case, size really doesn't matter because I'm an entrepreneur for managing 13 people, whatever. Plenty of challenge and creative outlet and that kind of stuff. But they identified this job, he is not the guy for this job in the test. Do you guys employ some of those things?
We do have a test that has some certain analytical and behavioral questions that we apply to everybody. And of course, that's the key. You got to be very careful. You have to do it for everybody within that grouping. So all our developers, et cetera, because we found that the way folks answer certain questions, it is an indicator. We don't use it though as the only component in making a decision. It's a part of an overall process. So if you don't do as well on the test, we'll look at some other things. We don't use it as a single determining factor to not bring someone on, but we use it as an aid. And yes, I do believe they can be very helpful. What's really important is that you have to apply a consistent approach. I've told you, anybody that's ever interviewed with me directly, one way or another, I weave into the conversation, hey, when you were a kid and you had a coloring book, did you like just the pretty pictures? Tell me what you liked. Did you do the outline with the coloring? What did you think about the puzzles and the connect the dot pages? And invariably, if they say, I hated the connect the dot pages, I skipped them, that's a red flag for me because it's about getting through the muck to the other side, solving a problem, getting to the end, figuring it out. And although I'm all about creativity, so long as you didn't completely skip them, you could have preferred the color pages and the pretty colors, but don't skip every connect the dot page. That to me, I have found repeatedly is an indicator.
So when I come into the lobby of your company, if you had a lobby, and there's like little coloring books there, I should make sure I do some of the connect the dot pages.
We actually do send them out during mental health week. We send coloring books because it relieves stress and there are some connect the dot pages in it and we talk about it. Everybody does at least one. You don't have to do them all, but some.
So one of my things is You really want to see somebody do the job. If you're hiring somebody for the job, to the extent that you could see them doing the job, that would be the best. And in some cases, the referrals, it boggles my mind how many of my managers would not call referrals. And I'm like, ask for 8. And they're like, 8? People can't give you 8 referrals. I'm like, 6 then. Ask for 6.
Right.
And they're
Right.
like, people can't give you 6 referrals. I'm like, if they can't give you 6 referrals, I don't know what we're doing here.
Exactly. The
Now,
other thing is,
entry level is different than,
of course, than senior. The other thing is fail fast. So if you bring somebody on and you see them in the job and you're not progressing, fail fast, have that conversation early and often, embrace the conflict, don't surprise people, be authentic, be transparent.
one of the things that was interesting about calling references to me was at least twice I can remember I called references. I ended up hiring somebody on the reference list.
Absolutely. It's an absolute great recruiting tool. And I agree. If somebody can't come up with 6 references, not just who you've worked for, but across even your subordinates, give your subordinates as a reference. I think that's a really vulnerable thing to do. And it's telling to me. I ask for it. I say, give me the name of someone that worked for you.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the other interesting things we did at St. Joe's, I was hiring for a CTO role and I wanted to see them do the job. So I put my entire IT infrastructure team in the room and a couple of the senior leaders, and we were down to 2 candidates. So we went through the whole process. We get down to 2 candidates and they're like, they're both the same. Pick one. I'm like, nah, let's do one more thing. So we put them in a room and we had a big whiteboard. It was an empty whiteboard and a bunch of markers in front of them. And first guy sits down. I said, hey, here's what we'd like for you to do. We're trying to move to the cloud. Everybody who you need to ask questions of is in this room. We'd love for you to map out the architecture and then make some recommendations on what we're doing and that kind of stuff. He completely froze. I don't understand. What are you asking me to do? I'm like, I'm asking you to do the job, like the job you're going to do in the first week anyway. And he just completely froze. The next person comes in, I gave him the same thing. He picked up the marker, went up to the whiteboard and he goes, okay, who's in charge of networking here? Oh, you are? Okay. Describe for me so there's a core switch, and he starts mapping it all out. Before he's done, the whole whiteboard's full and he's asking pointed questions and he's going, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? And I'm like, it was so obvious when we got done. It's like, all right, that's the guy.
And he engaged the room and didn't try to do it all himself. So
see them do the job is always good.
I have to say, I am amazed at your little team and the output that comes out of this group. And I, last weekend, just catching up, looking on LinkedIn, looking at the Newsday, looking at the expanded now 229, trying to figure out which ones we're going to do, support, whatever. And I'm like, mind blown. Like, how are you doing this with this teeny team? Now you got obviously Sarah and Drex coming on board, and their energy is infectious, and that just trickles down. Megan, I love what she's doing with all her leader stuff, but the output, forget about that. How are you doing it?
That's a great question. And we are going to answer, I'm just going to tease by saying we are going to answer that with some things we're going to be releasing next year that I believe are applicable for health IT leaders. And we're essentially going to talk about philosophy of leadership, culture, all those things. And we're going to get those things out there. But yeah, we're doing 20 summits. We're doing 36 city tours next year. We'll go to as many major conferences as we possibly can, plus producing, 8 shows a week. And people are like, hey, you produce too much. I can't listen to it all. I'm like,
yeah, you drive, you put it on your podcast, you listen in the backdrop, you get the snippets. It's just bravo. And of course, I get to be one of the early people in, and I keep adding more folks to come work with you. And I'm thrilled to be a part of your advisory group, et cetera. But bravo, really. I think we do a lot with what we've accomplished in our team, but I look at you and it's like magic.
We would be remiss if we didn't congratulate. First of all, happy birthday. I missed that one early on. I did wish you a happy birthday last week, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say congratulations to Megan, who's getting married. We're recording this on Tuesday. She's getting married on Thursday. By the time someone's hearing this, she's married. She has a new last name and all the things that entails, because I'm still in charge of IT here. So yeah. I've got to change that, all the places she wants me to change that. I'm like, I will get to that when I can. But I
saw that. I congratulated her. Actually, we were supposed to chat on my birthday, and then I had technical difficulties because I was traveling in New Orleans in my hotel for Marriott, I gotta say. It was a real problem, but so that's why we're here today. But you did wish me a happy birthday, and it was awesome. I was traveling, but I got to see all those women leaders in one place, and that was like the best birthday gift. It was so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is fantastic. In fact, the same time you were seeing all those women leaders in there, I was seeing all the women leaders.
That's SOAR, right?
Yeah.
It was why, because I really wanted to go to that and couldn't. I heard it was great. I'm definitely looking forward to it next year for sure. And I'm so excited about the stuff that you're doing with Alex's Lemonade. I'm obviously a mom, right? I'm wearing my hat proudly. I just think it's fantastic. I think you've raised almost close to $200,000 since you started.
We are getting close to that. And you are the first guest that I know of that has worn the hat on the show.
Everyone needs to be sporting their yellow hat. My dad passed away recently, and I was excited that we got some donations in lieu of flowers for Alex's Lemonade stand. Anybody that's a parent, and I've been a cancer patient, but to be a little person and go through that, I love what you're doing, Bill. I really do.
I appreciate your support. I appreciate you as an advisor, and I'm looking forward to the next time we're on the show. These are fun.
Yeah, great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for listening to Newsday. There's a lot happening in our industry, and while Newsday covers interesting stuff, another way to stay informed is by subscribing to our daily insights email, which delivers expertly curated health IT news straight to your inbox. Sign up at thisweekhealth.com/news. Thanks for listening. That's all for now.